So growth and development of the school-age child. School age, this is approximately 6 to 12 years of age, or you can say beginning with entry into school, or you can say beginning with the first lost tooth, and then it ends with puberty or the final permanent tooth other than the wisdom teeth. So physiologically, what's going on at this age? So height's going to increase about 2.5 inches per year. Weight's going to increase 3 to 3.5 kilos per year. During school age, boys and girls are about the same height and weight, but girls towards the end of this will develop faster in height and weight, but then they stop. And so boys get that, their puberty comes a little later, but they end up taller and heavier in the long run. So those secondary sex characteristics begin to appear right at the end of this stage, and then they head into puberty when they kind of fully develop. Some kids are going to grow taller and look more mature, but we need to make sure expectations of behavior are based on what their age is and not just what they look like. And others are going to be small, and we don't want to treat them as younger than they are. This age really is the age of the loose teeth. Once their teeth start coming out, it seems like they've always got one they're working on, one loose tooth somewhere. So systems during this age really do mature. Their neurologic system, right, they make huge cognitive advances during this age. This is where they first begin to read, and by the end of this, they're able to read complex things, math. They go from just learning the numbers to doing fairly complex math. So huge cognitive changes. Respiratory system, their rate's going to come down a little bit, and they get a lot less upper respiratory infections finally. Cardiovascular system, blood pressure goes up a little, pulse comes down a little. Immune system reaches the adult level around 10 years of age, and so thankfully that means they get a lot less infections. Gastrointestinal system, right, that includes our teeth, and this is the age where their teeth are falling out and they're getting their permanent teeth. Their stomach size finally gets larger, which means they can eat 3 large meals a day and not necessarily need small meals and snacks in between. They get a lot less upset stomachs. Their caloric needs actually go down per calorie, but their appetite may seem like it increased, but remember they can go longer between meals. Genital urinary, their bladder capacity increases, and our book just happens to tell us you can estimate that. It's their age in years plus 2 ounces is how much their bladder can hold. And this is the end of this stage is when those pre-puberty characteristics start appearing. Musculoskeletal, they get much more coordinated, much stronger, but remember those muscles are still immature. It's still easy to have injuries. They're starting to play sports, but we really got to be careful that they don't overdo it. Our developmental theories for this age. Erickson calls this industry versus inferiority, and he says at this age that children are ready to be doers and producers. They want to know how things are made. They seek success both personally in learning new things and socially in social tasks. They like outside activities. They'll do things with peers now. They love to learn, and they're just so excited about all the new things they're learning and able to do. Piaget calls this concrete operational, because they're not yet able to think abstractly, but they are able to assimilate and coordinate information from lots of different sources. Remember, they can now read, they can now tell time, they can understand another person's point of view, finally, right? That they're no longer egocentric. They understand how their actions affect others. They can classify, and this is an age that loves to collect. and that's that classification. And then conservation, we'll talk about that later, but that's a really important skill that they learn during this stage. Kohlberg, our moral development, he calls this conventional. This age likes rules, and they like conforming to the rules. There's the family rules. In our family, we do this. There's the friends. If you're going to be my friend, you have to, whatever, not cheat at school or join the Boy Scouts or whatever it is. Sports, right? You follow the rules. You don't try and cheat. So conforming to rules is important to them. And finally, at this age, instead of just thinking things are good or bad based on the outcome of it, they can see the intention behind it. That maybe you borrowed my bike and got in an accident and broke it. Well, now I can realize, well, you didn't try and break my bike, and I feel bad that you were in an accident, as opposed to being unhappy that you took my bike and broke my bike. So they can see that the intention, the motivation behind an action, and they can judge good and bad based on that, not just on the action itself. Freud calls this the latency period, because the focus is really on developing those new social and cognitive skills. In general, they tend to have same-sex friend groups, and at this age, they love making clubs and groups. You know, the wearing red shoes on Tuesday club, right? And that goes right back to those rules. The rule is you have to wear your red shoes on Tuesdays. So they really enjoy making those clubs and groups at this age. And here's pictures of them. They can do things independently as well as work with others. They love those collections. They do like rules, and they like conforming to the rules, and they love when their sports team wins. And they have their clubs that share interests together. And conservation. This is a really important skill. Up till now, you could give your child the tall, thin glass of juice, and they thought they got so much juice. And if you put it in the short, wide glass, they thought they didn't get hardly any. And now they understand that the same volume of liquid can be shaped differently. And even though it looks different, it's the same volume. This is a really important skill. You can't go on to any higher math without understanding this idea of conservation. So for fine motor skills, for gross motor skills, right, they're really developing coordination, balance, rhythm. This is why they're now starting to play sports, and gymnastics, things like that. Fine motor, their dexterity, their hand use really improves. Their eye-hand coordination and their balance improves. So now they can write, they can print, they can sew, they can build models, they can do all these things that use very fine skills with their hands. They take pride in those things that they can do. Whether they're the fine motor skills, building things, playing a musical instrument, or their team being good at sports. They take a lot of pride in all of these things. So, jump roping, playing a musical instrument, language and communication. Their vocabulary expands a lot during this time, from about 8,000 words at the beginning to 14,000 words at the end. They're starting to really learn culturally specific words that are within their family or their cultural group that they're in. Their reading improves language skills. So reading efficiency goes right along with those developing language skills. And they start developing more complex grammatical forms and using those, speaking in more complex sentences. They can finally understand metaphors. Up till now, they took things very literally. So if you said, he has a half sister, they'd think, gosh, which half? How do you only have half of a sister, or, a sleeping pill. The pills sleep? I didn't know pills sleep. And now they understand that those kind of idioms and metaphors, they're no longer so tied to being so literal. Emotional and social development issues. Temperament. We still have temperament differences, and that can be, we're still going to see issues with that at this age, especially when you have mismatch between the parents and the child. Self-esteem is developing, and that can be an issue of how that develops. Body image, that our sense of our body image develops very young. School age fears, peer relationships, and issues with that. Teacher and school influences, hopefully those are good. Family influence, again, hopefully those are good things. Stress and fear, we have a lot of pressure on our school age kids these days, and so they experience a lot of stress and can be very fearful of not measuring up, or just fearful of some of those bad relationships that may be existing in their lives. So some of the safety we want to promote with them: car safety. This age, they're still supposed to be in a booster seat until they're 4'9", which is, for many kids, 10-ish, 8 to 10, I would say. Pedestrian safety. This age, it's not just being in motor vehicle crashes, it's being hit by cars. So pedestrian safety, bike safety. We do want them wearing helmets. You're not going to, if you don't start young, you're not going to get them to do it when they're teens. But it's easy for cars to not see a bike. So not having them ride in the dark, making sure they're wearing safety gear, whether that's bike or other sports, wearing the safety equipment. Fire safety. Kids this age, this is where they play with matches and can start fires. Water safety. Hopefully they can swim at this age, or learn to swim at this age, but there's still dangers when you're in rivers and lakes that are different than a swimming pool, and so they need to understand that. Firearm safety. They're really intrigued by firearms, and so teaching them to be safe with that. Toxin safety or substance safety, abuse, understanding what a healthy relationship is and is not. So use that safety equipment. Promoting health, nutrition at this age. We want a balanced diet to help them grow. We have an epidemic of childhood obesity, and that's partly blamed on the food we're eating and partly on sedentary lifestyles already among children. Sleep. They do need sleep at this age, not as much as they've been needing, but they need predictable bedtimes and wake-up times. They often come in, all wound up from their sporting event or their whatever. So having that winding down before bed is good. They should be outgrowing night terrors and sleep walking by 8 to 10 years. Dental health, routine brushing, let that become a habit, and then routine cleanings. Concerns for school-age child: television and video games, not just the volume of screen time and that sedentary life, but also appropriateness of content. School refusal, which we call school phobia. We've got lots of latchkey kids, so that unsupervised time is when problems often develop, when things like bullying happen, and stealing, lying, cheating. These are all concerns, and bullying. These kids are worried about fitting in with peers, and we want to make sure we start tobacco and alcohol education at this age. Discipline. They do need discipline, but make it be natural and logical consequences, not something totally unrelated to what happened. They need to learn rules, teach the rules and values of the family and what is acceptable. Be consistent and apply it fairly. Focus on the child's development, and those positive things, encourage positive things to try and promote those behaviors that you do want to see. So culturally, they're being influenced by habits, beliefs, language, religious customs, and then the values that the family has